All right, we're here today continuing the Associa Gulf Coast educational series for managers and for board members. And today's guest is Hannah Gross and Daniel Allen from Guardian Restoration. Guardian Restoration is a vendor in our network here with Associa Gulf Coast. They've worked with several of our associations, and we can't speak highly enough of them and their services they provide. But speaking of services, let me pull Hannah into this conversation. Hannah, if I could you kind of introduce yourself, but also talk to me about Guardian Restoration and the services that you provide.
Sure. First, I just want to say thank you so much for having us today. My name is Hannah Gross, and I am the Business Development Director at Guardian Restoration. You will see me at many of the CAI events out in the community, and can certainly contact me anytime if y'all have questions. The services that we offer are structural repairs, water extraction and structural drying, emergency board up and tarping, mold remediation, fire, smoke, and deodorization, emergency dry-in, tree removal, pack out, and contents cleaning. So I know that sounds like a lot of different services and maybe some industry terms, but just to sum it up, any time that you would call your insurance company or have damage at your property, most likely we can certainly help you with the repairs or the emergency services at the property.
So in this, as you're describing the services, the content cleaning, the pack out, so basically if there's a disaster at Happy Valley Condominium Association, you'll do everything with the exception of build it back to how it was, or do you also do the build back?
We also do the build back as well. So we're kind of a take it from here type of approach. So when the emergency call comes in, we'll get out there with an emergency team. We'll assess everything that needs to be done. We'll document it. We'll photograph it. We'll do everything that your insurance company is going to ask the unit owners and the property owners and the board members to do. We're going to help you with that process. And then during the first initial stages of stabilizing the emergency and getting everything under control, we will then speak with your insurance company and start to get the rebuild process going as well. So it's a seamless process with us. I mean, it's basically staying all within the office that we handle everything start to finish.
Perfect. So it's that one-stop shop, if you will, from disaster to we can live in our unit again. Perfect. That makes both the manager's role much easier because they're making one phone call, and it makes the board's life easier because, again, it's one company start to finish. So, Hannah, if I may, from a geographic standpoint, what does Guardian Restoration, where do you cover? What's the geographic scope, if you will?
So we cover the Tampa Bay area. We are in Pinellas County, Hillsborough County, Manatee County, and then we cover northern Sarasota County, and then we have a couple of things up in Pasco and Hernando. But I believe most of your properties are in Pinellas, Hillsborough, Manatee, and then northern Sarasota. So from a client and manager standpoint, we should be able to provide coverage to, provide services to all of your properties that you have.
Perfect. Now, when we're dealing with disasters, obviously it can be extremely emotional, and people want answers. They demand answers. They demand access, both the manager and the board. So what's the Guardian what's the focal point when it comes to communication?
Our biggest focal point is communication. That's one of the things that we thrive on, and we insist that our employees do, is to over communicate. We would much rather somebody to tell us you're communicating too much than not enough. So what we do is we have instilled inside the company that we have levels of communication. So during the mitigation process, you're going to speak with a mitigation coordinator who's going to let you know every day, the day before somebody's coming out there. And since the emergency services happen so quickly, it's almost a daily phone call as we get started in the process. And then as you move into the rebuild side of things, you're assigned a project manager, and that project manager is going to reach out to you once a week and talk with you and go over things with you. But you also have a field supervisor who is basically boots on the ground during the rebuild and reconstruction process. And at that point, you have a direct line of communication. So there's multiple facets of Guardian Restoration that we want to get the communication out there. We do it via phone calls, site visits, text messaging, emails. We're very upfront and like to communicate with the customer because we don't want you in the dark. A lot of times this is the first time somebody's gone through this and they really don't know what to expect and they don't know what's going to happen. And what we try to do is we try to take the unknown out of it and walk them through the process, helping them every step of the way and getting them back to a pre-loss condition.
Excellent. Totally makes sense there. Now you mentioned, Daniel, in that little description that there's several people, not only the account manager, and forgive me if I messed up the titles of the individuals, but being a one-stop shop, you have multiple different people who will all be responding, and you say that there's multiple different ways. So from a manager's perspective and a board's perspective, they're not going to be, for lack of a better phrase, shut out of the information they need to understand what's going on for the association and an emotional time for damage like this. Am I right in understanding that you're going to communicate in multiple different ways?
Absolutely. We don't want them shut out at all. We are a 24-hour company. Therefore, we take care of a lot of stuff in the emergency aspect. So an email or something like that over to us, if they need an immediate answer or a phone call, they're going to have the ability to reach out and get the answers that they need. If they call in during the day, they're going to get a return call that day to give them the answers, or at least a communication with them, letting them know that, hey, we're speaking with your adjuster, or this is what's going on. We're trying to get this handled for you, and this is where we're at. So if you call, you're going to get a call back that day.
Perfect. So I want to take this in a little bit of a different direction. And the reason I'm saying that is disasters don't happen very often. They get, they're extremely emotional for everybody because you're dealing with people's homes. And in some cases, you're dealing with insurance companies naturally, but you're also dealing with a unit owner who might not know who, when I say who, I mean whether it's the unit owner or the association, who is responsible for what in terms of cost, actions to be taken. So Hannah, can you walk us through a little bit of how you, from a Guardian Restoration's perspective, how do you help mitigate that problem, that confusion of who's responsible for what?
Absolutely. I thought that was your job and you were going to handle all that for everybody.
Nice try.
No, in all seriousness, we, like Daniel said early on, we'll take it from here. We handle the entire process. So if a manager or a board member calls in with a loss, and they're just really not sure what to do, for example, maybe they hadn't even contacted their insurance agent or the carrier, we'll get out there and we will take a look at what's going on, and then we will walk them through that process every step of the way and guide them to, hey, you need to, call your insurance agent and maybe put your carrier on notice. If a claim is filed, we ask for the adjuster's contact information. We will communicate with the agent to communicate with the adjuster. We'll meet them out at the property. And then kind of the final steps in that process is the insurance carrier. We do provide detailed insurance documentation that is sent over to the carriers, and we work with them to get the scope of work approved. So there's no surprise billing at the end of it. So we will handle the entire process. So I know, a lot of properties have never experienced a disaster or emergency damage that, takes place and they're not sure what to do. We will guide them through that entire process, whether it goes through insurance or they decide to do a cash pay. So we have one point of contact, and we will communicate so that they don't need to manage, that project. We'll communicate with all the different people involved.
Excellent. So again, you're taking the manager and the board effectively, and this is a good thing, effectively out of it because you, from a guardian perspective, you are communicating, you're working with the insurance agents and the insurance companies, and by extension, then you're communicating the status of those types of things with the manager and the board. So first of all, thank you for that. It makes the manager's life exponentially easier. But if we're going to stay with insurance for a little bit, there's an unbelievable amount of documentation that's required when you're dealing with insurance companies and those sorts of things. Let's make an assumption, for the sake of argument, that a disaster has just happened at Happy Valley HOA. What is it that you, Hannah, or you, Daniel, what is it that you need from the association to start the process if one of our managers calls you and says, we just had a fire, we just had a toilet overflowed and it ruined 3 units below it? What is it what's going to make the job easier for the manager in terms of what stuff can they get ready for you, whether it's paperwork, contact information, or something like that, to make your job easier, which will by extension make our jobs easier? So what is it that we need to get ready for you?
The biggest thing that we could use to get ready for us coming out there is to make sure that somebody from the board, the president or vice president, or even if the property manager has the authority, able to sign the work authorization for us to get started. That's step one. But most importantly is the communication. If they can have a list of the phone numbers that we can start making phone calls to, because a lot of times unit owners may not be present. They may be up north or out on vacation or out enjoying life, because, I mean, we live in sunny Florida, so they may not necessarily be there. But if we have a way that we can communicate with them and let them know what's going on, and we know who the insurance companies are and are able to speak with them, then we can start that process. And then the most important piece is just having somebody there that can sign a work authorization to let us get going. Because once we get going and we start the process, that's going to be the first question out of the insurance company is, do you have a signed work authorization so that we can have this conversation? And when we can provide that to them, that exponentially speeds up the process and allows so much more to get done, because we're in a time-sensitive response. And that's why we come out so quickly, is people think, oh, it's a fire, I've got a few days to figure this out. Well, during an emergency response to a fire, we can save doorknobs and stainless steel and porcelain and stuff of that nature by getting out there and getting the soot or the carcinogens cleaned off of those items to help reduce the cost and help reduce what's going on. So it's important that you have documentation, phone numbers, and an authorized person there to sign for us.
I think you make a very good point. So from a critical perspective, the board not only needs to be aware of the disaster that's happening, but they need to be accessible at the outset to get other things rolling, like dominoes. The board has to be part of that first domino to get things rolling. So I totally understand that from that perspective. And thank you for that being the primary piece that we can get ready in the event of a disaster. Knock on wood, hopefully we don't have any disasters, but they're going to happen. It's inevitable. So another scenario that comes up from time to time from the manager's perspective is water damage. And I use the example of the longer you wait, the more it's going to cost. Water is devastating to, obviously, to drywall, but it's devastating anyway. It'll ruin just about everything. So do you find that from a water remediation perspective, how quickly does somebody need to take action to stop mold from going all over the place? I know I'm saying that in general terms, but if a board doesn't take action quickly, you run the risk of turning a $500 damage issue into a $50,000 scenario. So if you could, talk to me a little bit about like mold as a primary, oh my gosh, we got to do something.
Paul, you're exactly right. If we don't take care of water immediately, going from a very small claim, well under the deductible thing to handle, to we're pushing policy limits can happen very quickly. Mold needs two things to set up. It needs still air and moisture. Well, when we apply moisture to a wall cavity, we now have the recipe for, the lack of terms, a disaster. And when we allow that to sit there, I'll get a little technical on you just to kind of give you a time frame. It takes 48 hours to 72 hours for the spores to start setting up and start reproducing. So you think, oh, well, I've got 2 days. No, that's for the growth to happen, for us to visually see it. Because mold is constantly blowing around us, the moment we introduce water, we're starting that clock. So if you think about a loss that takes place, homeowner or unit owner goes to sleep at night, a pipe bust at, let's say, 1 a.m. in the morning. By the time they wake up, let's say they're an early riser and they're up at 5:30, they discover it, they start making phone calls, they try to do something on their own, then the other neighbors wake up and discover stuff going on. We're now well into 8, maybe 9 o'clock in the morning. We're now 7 or 8 hours that this has been introduced to the building materials. That's how fast the process can start. So getting a disaster restoration company in the door immediately, making an immediate phone call, we will come out and assess anything. We'll come out and look at it if you've got water. We'll start you through the process and get you going. But the quicker that we can get dehumidification set up, we can get air movement on there to start getting everything to dry out, the faster we're going to be able to take care of the problem. I like to give a little scenario that most people can relate to. If you were to wash your clothes in a washing machine and then let them sit there for 30 or 40 minutes before you pick them up and throw them in the dryer to dry it out, you take the chance of your clothes maybe having a little bit of a musty smell. Think of your house the same way. If you wait too long to start that drying process, you're going to have stuff left behind. And the stuff left behind is the unfortunate mold that comes with it. So if it's wet and you instantly notice it, get a professional out there to instantly start taking care of it and allow that process to happen so that we can prevent more issues down the road or secondary damage down the road. And then the property managers and the board can say, we did our due diligence in getting an emergency professional out here to handle this the moment we were notified. You never want to hear, well, I called the board and waited 3 days for something. You want to hear, I called the board and somebody was here within 2 hours. That is a very proactive board and a very proactive property manager that is going to push the liability somewhere else.
Outstanding. Well, I truly want to thank you both for your time we've spent. You've given us an awful lot of information and an awful lot of stuff to think about naturally when it comes to disasters. And the whole goal is not to have a disaster, but let's face it, they're going to happen. But again, thank you so much for your time, for both of you. Plenty of knowledge for this educational series for our Associa Gulf Coast managers and board members. But it's going to happen where somebody wants to reach out to you directly, whether it's a manager or a board member, and they might not be looking at the video right now. But Hannah or Daniel, what's the best way for a manager or a board member to contact you directly, whether it's for an actual disaster that they need help, or if they've got a question or a concern about something in your world? What's the best way to connect with you?
The best way to reach us
is to always contact. I'll take it.
That's okay. We got it. Finally happened. There you go. So let's go. Let's go back. So I'll open this one up again. No problem. Totally expected. So give me about 1 second. So Hannah, if I could, what's the best way if a manager wants to reach out to you or a board member wants to reach out to you? What's the best way for them to reach out to you directly, whether it's for an actual disaster or if it's a question about something that might be happening in the disaster world? So Hannah, I'll ask you to go first, and then Daniel, if I could, your contact information as well. So Hannah, if I could.
So if there is a disaster at a property and the manager or the board member, whomever, needs immediate assistance and attention at the property, we always ask that they contact our office. And the reason we ask that they contact our office is because we've got people on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So if that's, Friday at 2 a.m. or Sunday at noon, whatever time that is, we've got people ready to respond 24/7. And that best number for our office is our 24-hour line. It's 877 527 3282. And then we also have an email that's monitored, regularly. I'd like to say 24 hours a day, but, pretty regularly through the day and night. And that's claims at guardianflorida.com, CLAIMS at guardianflorida.com. And as you asked earlier, if there's questions or, someone, needs our services or just isn't sure what to do, they can certainly reach out to me directly, and that would be on my cell phone. That number is 727-212-1202, or by email with Hannah@guardianflorida.com. And, they're welcome to reach out to me at any time with questions or concerns at the property.
Perfect. And Daniel, for you, if I may, how might a manager or a board member reach out to you?
You can reach me via cell phone, and my cell phone is 727-248-9995. And then my email is dallen, and that's DALLEN, at guardianflorida.com. And the Florida is actually completely spelled out, not just the abbreviation. You can catch me either way on there. If you want to text my cell phone, more than welcome to text me as well. I try to keep that as close to me as possible and be more than happy to take questions or field anything that they might have going on or just need a second opinion. We're here to be a team member. We're here to be a player and to be a part of the puzzle to help everybody out.
Outstanding. Well, once again, thank you very much for your time today. Truly appreciate your support, not only for Associa Gulf Coast, but the clients that we represent and the work that you do. Much continued success, both to you personally, but also for Guardian Restoration as a company. Again, much continued success. Thank you both very much for your time.
Thank you, Paul, for having us. We appreciate the partnership, and we, although we know you don't want to call us, we hope that we are your first choice when you need, disaster recovery services or any restoration needs on your properties. So thanks again so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Paul, so much.
You're very welcome. And you're right, Hannah. We hope we never do call you, but darn it, we will. Again, thank you very much.